Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Nigeria this week marked the 2026 Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day in tribute to those who lost their lives in the cause of defending the nation during crisis. Vice President Kashim Shettima represented President Bola Tinubu at the parade ground in Abuja, even as officials, veterans and military families paused to reflect on sacrifice, service and the nation's debt to those who defend it. State House correspondent Adesua Omorwan tells us more.
Colorful yet solemn. Nigeria's Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day honors fallen soldiers from past wars to today's fight against terrorism, while recognizing veterans and their families. Dignitaries, government officials, and service chiefs arrive in a formal procession. The arrival of Vice President Kashim Shettima, representing President Bola Tinubu, marks the formal commencement of the ceremony. He takes the salute and inspects the guard of honor. Prayers are then offered by Muslim and Christian clerics, followed by a minute of silence. The Vice President then leads the laying of wreaths at the tomb of the unknown soldier, paying tribute to those who sacrificed their lives defending Nigeria's security. The firing party delivers 3 volleys, followed by the release of pigeons, a symbol of peace, bringing the ceremonial proceedings to a close. For the Minister of Defense, the occasion is deeply personal. Last year, he attended in uniform as Chief of Defense Staff. This year, he comes in civilian capacity, overseeing the armed forces from the political helm.
It's exciting, a new challenge, and I think what the armed forces have done for us is that it prepares you for whatever. So this is part of it, and then we'll take up the responsibilities and continue with it. So I want to thank Nigerians for the support to the armed forces and to continue to make them understand that the challenges we're facing is surmountable. We're working together as a team, as Nigerians, and that's what we pray for.
Lawmakers say the remembrance must be matched with support for troops.
We are proud of what the President is doing about the welfare of the men in service. It can only get better. With time, it will keep improving because security is on the front burner, and as Parliament, we are not going to look at anything else but improving the budget where need be to ensure that all that the military, the armed forces need, that they have them.
For those representing veterans and families of fallen soldiers, the message is directed to troops still in harm's way.
Today made us to remember the fallen heroes and those ones still serving. I said those ones still serving, they should have hope and have assurance that after the service, something good is waiting for them.
Military families, often described as the silent casualties of conflict, were also acknowledged. The wife of the Chief of Defense Staff, who also chairs the Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association, says concerns of welfare are being addressed.
Many women have not just lost their husbands, some have, even those whose husbands are alive, have had to raise the families alone. There's a lot of sacrifice that has been paid by military families, and I want to say to them that we as the leaders see you, we hear you, and I believe that Nigerians are gradually beginning to understand the level of sacrifice that is made by the military community.
Wreaths have been laid, prayers offered, and the last post sounded here in Abuja, bringing to a close Nigeria's Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day for 2026. But beyond the ceremony, today is a reminder of the cost of the country's many security battles and the men and women who continue to serve on multiple fronts. From the arcade at the 3 Armed Zone in Abuja, Adesua Omorwan, Arise News.
Well, a beautiful report there from Adesua Omorwan on the Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day. of course, when we consider all the insecurity in Nigeria, it's always very easy to forget sometimes, that some people are paying the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that Nigerians remain safe, to ensure that we enjoy relative peace, both internally and externally. So, Adesua, what do you think of the way our fallen heroes, and even our serving heroes were celebrated this year?
I think it looks like how they were celebrated last year and also the year before last. I'm not entirely sure that we as a nation have actually had a very solemn moment with each other about the cost of our protection, the cost of our safety, and the men and women who are losing not just life, but also limb in order to protect us. Because not just are we talking about the fallen soldiers and the families they left behind, but we have soldiers that we see today who are amputees, who might have lost their sight, who have been, seriously injured and have to then go through life as disabled persons. And we must ask ourselves what is being done for their welfare, what is being done, to take care of even those who are still here with us. Those are the questions that we need to keep asking ourselves. It is heartbreaking when you see that there might not be a national consciousness of the fact that there are people who go every day to the dangerous areas of this country to protect us. And it might have to do with our history of military rule and perhaps people having not exactly a pure relationship with the military. However, now in 2026, particularly when we've seen pressure from the international community, we're seeing a lot of young Nigerian men and women putting their lives on the line. Just last week, one of the victims of the Owo church massacre was talking about being a double amputee and losing one eye. And that's a terror victim, but we have soldiers, ex-servicemen and women who are living like that today. And so I think instead of us just having these events once a year and then, wearing the pins and moving on, we need to think about the welfare of those who are still with us.
Definitely, and it has to be a continuous thing throughout the year. Well, I know that the president, who was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, he reaffirmed his unwavering commitment to the welfare and dignity of serving personnel, and he promised that he will continue to support the armed forces, in confronting all the security challenges in the country. Now, for me, on a lighter note anyway, the pigeons, they flew this year. So I think that's a great thing. It's supposed to symbolize peace, unity.
Possibly
so just
a good omen.
a good omen.
Possibly a good omen. Well, still on security, the Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, this week warned Islamic cleric Sheikh Ahmed Gumi and other individuals perceived as sympathetic to terrorists and bandits to desist from providing overt or covert support to criminal elements seeking to destabilize the country. Speaking in Maiduguri, Borno State, which has been the epicenter of Nigeria's decade-and-a-half struggle against insurgency and terrorism in the northeast, General Musa made it clear that those who engage in such acts of sabotage do not represent any form of regional, ethnic, or religious brotherhood. He stressed that Nigerians must refrain from supporting or justifying criminal activities in any form, and explained that his remarks were deliberate and purposeful, not merely symbolic. I think these remarks coming from General Christopher Musa are very important and very necessary, especially in light of what we've seen in the past week as well, coming from Kebbi State in terms of releasing bandits in a prisoner exchange or in exchange for hostages. In light of some of the utterances that we have seen from these clerics, what is important here is that he's saying it's not symbolic. And I think, I've also watched the interview that he did with the BBC House recently, and he was talking about how our fight against terrorism cannot just be about guns and bullets, that we must also talk about this moral element that we are dealing with in our society, where we have people sympathizing with terrorists, people sympathizing with fraudsters. It seems that the moral fabric of our society has been broken in some sort of way. And that is critical. As he said, a friend of a thief is a thief as well. But it's also because some people are saying, oh, this person is a criminal, and other people are helping them launder the money they stole. And they feel that they're exempt from the theft or they're exempt from the original crime. And it is not. You are still part of the chain of events. I think there is anyone who's serious about Nigeria's future and security also has to be serious about healing the moral fabric of our society right now.
Definitely, you've said it, you couldn't have put it any better. And frankly speaking, I think this warning from the defense minister is long overdue. This is something that should have happened a long time ago. We've had a lot of sympathizers, we've had a lot of clerics come out to actually advocate, for these bandits. And it just makes you wonder, really, what is Nigeria turning into? How do you begin to try to justify and legitimize violence? I can't even describe it. So I really appreciate this message from the defense minister. And I believe that apart from warning, next time somebody crosses the line and actually attempts to defend, or advocate for this bandit, I think something more serious should be done. There should be consequences for sympathizing with and for trying to legitimize what they're doing under whatever guise. A lot of Nigerians are facing severe economic hardship. If everybody decides to start committing crimes as a way of finding, a solution to what they are going through, would be in a state of chaos and anarchy. So really, you cannot defend the indefensible. And this is what some advocates have been trying to do.
Definitely.
Now, there have been conflicting signals from former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's household after his son announced his decision to transfer his political allegiance from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. The defection was announced on Thursday in the National Assembly in Abuja, where the younger Atiku Abba was formally received by Deputy Senate President Senator Barau Jibrin in the company of leaders of the key APC caucus from the Northeast geopolitical zone, in what party leaders described as a significant political realignment. That is so interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting, but I'm not entirely sure this is a major news story in the way that we are making it. Atiku's son decamps to the APC. I don't understand why this is a major news story. I remember in the past when he was running for election, people said that, he wants to be president to feed all his children. Now people are saying, his children are not even supporting him. Is that not a positive thing? I do not know many people, because we think about Nigerian politics and we think about how it functions. Many people are in different parties from their parents, sometimes from their spouses. People have different political alignments. We have members of the House of Representatives today, for example, Honorable Bello Erufai, who is in a different party from his father. We also have even, Senator David Mark's daughter, in a different party from her father. And of course, when we look at younger people coming through politics, they're risk averse, I would say, compared to the stalwarts like the Atikus or like the Nasir El-Rufais, who have their own political clout, perhaps have their own war chests. They have more strength and more weight in the political game. And so they're willing to take risks with their political futures because they're older. They have experience. They've built their names. Perhaps their children do not want to take the same risk as them and move towards the ruling party. We've seen this happen, and we've been talking about a one-party state and how that functions, and how they now have, the APC has a supermajority in the House of Representatives. They have a supermajority in the Senate. That how even governors are being pressured to move to the APC. Much less the son of a former vice president, who I don't believe has been vice president since 2007, nearly 20 years now. So, when we're talking about these things, I think we should also talk about it in realistic terms of how politics functions in Nigeria. Atiku's son is not in ADC, okay. Some people's children want to be artists, some people want to be politicians, but not a lot of people would say that, their children are following them. Is that about leadership? Is that about the parties themselves or what they represent? Because I think it's being painted as what it represents for the ADC or for the PDP, which he left. But I think we need to more so just look at it about how our politics is currently functioning in Nigeria, where multiple governors are fleeing to the APC.
But I do understand your point, Adesua, but I think at the same time, I guess that's why this is also, I wouldn't say a big story, but why it's an issue for a lot of Nigerians, because then they're wondering, all the people defecting, are they doing it based on ideology? Is it based on policy? Is it based on personal ambition? You know, when you think about how politics is played in Nigeria, you tend to feel like there's an underlying personal ambition, selfish agenda, you know, that is driving all these things. And then you now compare it with family relationship, you compare it with his father's ambition, and then, you know, it just makes for, I think it just makes for a very funny story that has been discussed on social media, you know, and is being bandied about in several households.
Definitely. I mean, the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has responded saying that he doesn't, you know, he's not going to coerce his son. His son has his own journey. He's an adult, and which is very true. And I think if we had parties that were ideologically based in Nigeria, we would welcome these type of developments. But you're absolutely right. Most people see parties as vehicles in which to reach their own personal goals. And it's not, we're not really seeing parties as having ideologies or people-driven policy in Nigeria, regardless of what party that may be. And so that is why this is a conversation. Yes, it's an issue, but
you know, and
it's not surprising.
The APC in Lagos, you know, they really took advantage of this to play politics. You know, they released a statement saying that his defection, that's Abba's defection, is a generational rebuke of recycled politics, expired ambitions, and the illusion of leadership without conviction. Of course, that is a direct dig at his father. And that is what we're saying. It really shouldn't be about his father, should it? But they've made it about his father.
Well, we'll see how it goes now. From politics, we are going on to Nigeria's economy, as Nigeria's headline inflation considerably eased to 15.15% in December of 2025, following a methodological review by the National Bureau of Statistics, signaling a significant moderation in price pressures compared with both the previous month and the same period last year. On a year-on-year basis, headline inflation fell to 15.15% in December of 2025 from 17.33% in November, and was far lower than the 34.80 recorded in December of 2024. This reflected a sharp deceleration in inflation over the 12-month period. So what do you think about this before I jump into the MBS and abracadabra numbers?
Oh, well, you know, I was reading up about this, and I liked what I saw some analysts say. They said the change in the headline inflation does not alter the lived experience for households and businesses. Food, transport, housing, and energy prices did not suddenly change because of a rebasing exercise. What changed is how inflation is measured and compared over time. And I guess, you know, it's according to international standards. The NBS is allowed to review and they are allowed to change their methods there. But at the same time, Nigerians know the reality of what they are going through. And like the IMF said, if inflation continues to decline over time, then we'll begin to see significant economic improvement. So this is not the time, you know, for the government or for policymakers to begin to beat their chest and say, hooray, Nigeria is working. I mean, this is just a very, I wouldn't say it's an insignificant step, but it's a little step in the right direction.
Yes, I think it's very important when we talk about inflation. Oftentimes people forget that inflation is measuring the rate in which price is increasing. And so when we have a reduction in inflation, it doesn't mean that prices are actually reducing. And that's why the average Nigerian does not experience a change. What I'm telling you is that the price is increasing at a slower rate than which it was increasing before. So maybe before you'd have gone to the market and in 1 week it would have jumped in 1 month it would have jumped 34%, but now it's only jumping 15%. To the average person, the price is still increasing. They're still unable to afford more with their money. Wages are sticky. And our bills are increasing, our tax burden is increasing. And so even though inflation has slowed down, it does not affect the average Nigerian in a positive way that they can really sense or that they can really feel. And that's what's important when we talk about these macroeconomic gains. Because before we even talk about the rebasing, yes, they were due to rebase the figures, but even after that, they said that they were changing the calculations reported by Reuters earlier this week. The MBS said that if they if they just dealt with only the rebase number, the number would be too high. And so they gave us this number. And that's why I say they gave us this number, because we saw the NBS do the same thing with our unemployment. Instead of improve unemployment and underemployment in the country, instead of create job opportunities for young Nigerians, they simply change what they considered unemployment depending on the hours you work. And so, we must talk about the realities of these macroeconomic gains, giving the president the 15% he wants. Tinubu had said when he presented the budget that his budget was going to drive down to 15%. So people laughed and said, well, they'll give us the 15%. But some way or another, that 15% number will come. But what we're talking about when we talk about inflation, yes, it's good to see these macroeconomic changes move in a right direction. It's good to believe that the government and the Tinubu's renewed hope agenda is working in these macro ways. But in the micro, in the lived lives of the average Nigerian, does it matter? Does it improve their lives? Does it change? Because we're seeing we're seeing PwC say that over 120 million Nigerians are going to be in poverty by the end of this year. The IMF and the World Bank released reports saying that the macroeconomic trends are good, but also saying that more people are going to enter poverty this year. What does it mean that is a positive outcome for the IMF if our loans are repaid to them, but more Nigerians are living in poverty?
Now, those are very tough questions, Adisa. We need to get an expert here to come and help us address all these issues. Well, in other news, veteran Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has taken a commanding lead in early results from Thursday's presidential election as the party of his main challenger, Bobi Wine, claims the opposition leader is under effective house arrest. Partial results released by the Electoral Commission on Friday show Museveni with 76.25% of the vote based on tallies from nearly half of polling stations. Bobi Wine trails with 19.85%, while 6 other candidates share the remainder. Museveni had earlier said he expected to win decisively if there's no cheating. Wine has rejected the results, alleging widespread fraud on a vote held amidst an internet blackout and a campaign marked by violence. His National Unity Platform party said late on Thursday that security forces had surrounded his home in Kampala, effectively placing him under house arrest, a claim police say they were unaware of. Now, Adisa, I'm sure you're not really surprised, with what's playing out in Uganda. We know that Museveni is determined to cling on to power. Yes. He has said he's the only person that can keep the stability of Uganda. He's seeking his 7th term. He's been in office since 1986. And sadly, some people have died, but then I guess that's what happens when people's personal ambition and selfish agenda comes to play. Bobi Wine's party, according to a report I read on the BBC just hours ago, said that a helicopter flew into his compound and that they've whisked the opposition leader to an unknown place. Of course, the police is denying the reports. They said they don't know anything about it. And internet access has been cut off in Uganda, so it's very difficult to verify some of the news making the rounds. But it's just so sad. At this point, I just wonder where the African Union is. If it's a coup that happened in a country now, you see the African Union releasing statements. You see African leaders, talking about democracy. But what's happening in Uganda at this moment? Is this really democracy? Or is this how democracy is played in Africa? So many questions going through my mind, really.
Yes, Yoweri Museveni, as you said, he has been in power for close to 40 years. He is one of Africa's prominent gerontocrats, the old guard of leaders who refuse to let go of the reins of power. Of course, this is not the first time that they have shut off the internet. My dear friends in Uganda were unreachable for a couple of days, and it's an intense situation where you fear for your friends or your loved ones because of this violence. Saying 7 people have been killed overnight. It says when it's speaking about Bobi Wine being on house arrest and a helicopter allegedly coming into his compound. We must remember what happened to Eddie Mutwe, his bodyguard, who was taken and tortured, posted half naked by Museveni's son, of course, on the internet. We have seen this type of repression in Uganda happen over and over again. As you said, the African Union will not probably will not release a statement in this, but we also have to ask about our regional bodies as well, because we have the ECOWAS, we have the SADC. Uganda, of course, and Museveni, of course, has positioned itself in a very interesting way, because for me also, something very frightening about the situation in Uganda is not just the repression of civil liberties or the degradation of democracy. It's that even when you look at that and then you look at the inflation, it's single digits. When you look at the economic growth, it's still much faster than it is in Nigeria. When you look at the agricultural sector, it is still better developed than ours.
But does that justify
it does not
seat-tight
justify,
leadership?
but I think sometimes when we look at other countries and we compare the situation to Nigeria, I always like to contextualize how bad it is in Nigeria, because I think we might not understand how bad things have gotten in Nigeria. For us to be speaking about 34% inflation last year, and we're only speaking about lower numbers because we're rebasing and we're rejigging how we even calculate inflation. When we look at what other countries have been able to accomplish, even regardless of these horrible circumstances, that we must have to have a conversation with ourselves about where we're going and if we're really serious people.
Oh, true. I mean, when you relate it to the Nigerian experience, but then at the same time, we can only speak as Nigerians. You know, I would love to speak with the Ugandans and actually find out what they are going through, because a lot of youth in Uganda, they are craving for change, which is why Bobi Wine has such a great followership. Some of them, Yoweri Museveni is the only leader they've ever known, and I'm sure they believe there's something better. I'm sure they're dissatisfied with the state of their lives at the moment and they want something better. And I think that's reasonable. It's acceptable, really. Why should one person be in power for over 40 years or close to 40 years? What is it really offering that no other individual in the whole of Uganda can offer?
Definitely. Well, you're absolutely right there. There are a lot of Ugandans who have only known Museveni as a president. In fact, most, because most of the population is under the age of 21. And Museveni, of course, joins his other long-serving African leaders like Teddy Nguema in Equatorial Guinea, just here in our neighborhood. Just like we see in Togo as well with Nasingbe, there are people who have held on to power for decades. Paul Biya of Cameroon held on to power for decades and refused to let go. But let's go over to a different situation. We're leaving the continent now as the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, says that she has presented her Nobel Peace Prize medal to U.S. President Donald Trump during a private White House meeting. Calling it a historic moment for Venezuelans, Machado said that the gesture symbolized shared values and gratitude for Trump's stance on freedom. Trump described the meeting as an honor, but stopped short of endorsing Machado as Venezuela's new leader, continuing instead to engage with interim authorities. The Nobel Committee later clarified that while a medal can be gifted, the Nobel Peace Prize itself cannot be transferred.
I presented the President of the United States the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize, and I told him this, listen to this. 200 years ago, General Lafayette gave Simón Bolívar a medal with George Washington's face on it. Bolívar since then kept that medal for the rest of his life. Actually, when you see his portraits, you can see the medal there. And it was given by General Lafayette as a sign of the brotherhood between the United States, people of the United States and the people of Venezuela in their fight for freedom against tyranny. And 200 years in history, the people of Bolívar are giving back to the heir of Washington a medal, in this case a medal of the Nobel Peace Prize, as a recognition for his unique commitment with our freedom.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has again told Iranian protesters that help is on the way, urging them to keep protesting as unrest continues across the country. Trump encouraged demonstrators to take control of their institutions, pointing to new tariffs on countries doing business with Iran as part of the pressure campaign. In an earlier online post, he warned Iranian officials of consequences over the killing of protesters while stopping short of explaining what U.S. support might look like.
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing. The killing looks like it's significant, but we don't know yet for certain. I'll know within 20 minutes. So, and we'll act accordingly.
How can you ensure that U.S. airstrikes, if it comes to that, will have the result of protecting the protest?
Well, you never know, do you? You never know.
You think it's...
So far, my track record's been excellent, but you never know.
Do you think it's going to be something kinetic like that, or more like cyber?
Well, I can't tell you that. I know exactly what it would be. We have to make a decision. But I can't be. Obviously, I can't be telling you.
Iran says that it will retaliate in the instance of U.S. strikes against U.S. assets in the Middle East. What do you say to U.S. service members about why it's worth the risk to intervene in Iran?
Yeah, Iran said that the last time I blew them up with the nuclear capability, which they don't have any longer. So Iran said that the last time. They better behave.
So, Mr. President, on Iran, do you have a message for the leaders currently of Iran?
Yeah, the message is they've got to show humanity. They've got a big problem, and I hope they're not going to be killing people. And I'm going to have a report very soon. It would seem to me that they have been badly misbehaving, but that is not confirmed.
Well, Donald Trump has certainly taken the world into uncertain waters, as expected when he was elected. First of all, Venezuela, quickly, Machado, that was a bit of a show of shame for me. It was embarrassing, but it was expected. She has been doing this song and dance to please Donald Trump, who is a thin-skinned bully, as some people would like to call him. Now, she's given him all he wanted. She has not necessarily been rewarded for it. Very importantly is that the United States has begun selling Venezuelan oil. They have sold $500 million worth of Venezuelan oil, according to U.S. administration officials. And what we are hearing from Venezuela is that they're being told that the money was sent to a bank in Qatar, and that $300 million of that will be sent back to Venezuela. So that's a $200 million gap coming from Venezuelan oil. We have actually skipped neocolonialism and gone straight back.
Since you always like to narrow it down to the Nigerian experience, you can see it seems it's happening all over the world. Corruption is not unique to Nigeria.
It is not. It is not.
And then talking about Machado, really, I'm very happy that the Nobel Committee clarified that even though she has gifted the president the medal, she hasn't transferred, the award to him. We know this is something Trump has always desired. He's wanted to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So I guess he still has to wait, despite what Machado has done. He still has to wait for his time if he's ever going to get the award. Now, in Iran, of course, he has told protesters to keep protesting. He says help is on the way. But some analysts believe that he's backtracking because he posted on his Truth Social that Iran has suspended the planned execution of over 800 people. And he said, thank you. So some analysts believe that this suggests that maybe he's backtracking on his plans to intervene militarily, even though some people are wondering how accurate really that story is, that Iran was planning to execute 800 protesters, or that they had suspended that plan, if indeed there was a plan in the first place. But we know that Donald Trump, once he comes up with an agenda, he runs with it, and he's not swayed or he's not deterred by whatever anybody else has to say.
Definitely. I mean, as you said, he really does want this Nobel Peace Prize. In fact, he has now offered to negotiate the River Nile issue between Egypt and Ethiopia, particularly due to the dam. So he's still, his campaign is still ongoing. And as you said, with Iran, is he backtracking? Is he moving forward? He's fighting battles on different sides here. Now we have him dealing with Iran and also Greenland and his NATO allies, whether they're still allies.
And some of his cabinet members, also suggesting that Iceland becomes the 52nd state of the United States.
Iceland or Greenland?
No, apart from Greenland, now somebody else in his cabinet is talking about Iceland.